Hey guys, tonight we step into the moonlit corridors of ancient Rome, where power isn't just spoken from marble thrones or written on scrolls, but stitched carefully into leather soles. You're about to discover a strange imperial habit, one that most historians gloss over, but that just might explain why certain Caesaries behaved so unpredictably. Because when the moon swelled in the Roman sky, they didn't sharpen their swords, they changed their shoes. You find yourself standing in the shadow of a great palace. The floor beneath you is as cold as polished stone, and the air has that curious smell of incense and scrap metal. Guards mutter to each other in low Latin, and you notice that no one is looking directly at the emperor, but rather at his feet. It is a full moon, and that means one thing. He is going to change his sandals. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you. I always imagine someone em uma rede, ou talvez numa cama com o ventilador fazendo aquele barulhinho de fundo. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You are in the baths of Diocletian, but not for a bath. You are serving a figure you call Dominus, though he was once called Caesar, and before that a man. And now he is something more. With each full moon, the routine is the same. A quick bath in rosewater, a new robe, and a new pair of sandals. Always made in silence, always from the leather of a single animal, and always in a hurry. You don't question, no one questions. They just observe. The sandals arrive wrapped in purple cloth, carried by a servant who never speaks or makes eye contact. They are simple, but every detail is deliberate. Tiny, crescent-shaped stitching, a leather strap that mimics the curve of a waning moon. A symbol etched into the sole that only shows up in dim light. The emperor extends his foot without looking. He doesn't thank you. He doesn't complain either, but you notice his shoulders relax when the new sandals touch the ground. As if now, yes, he can reign, you think. Maybe this is just a whim. Like his habit of eating figs only broken by children, or ordering absolute silence while pruning the vines. But no. There is something else in the servants' eyes. They don't seem to obey out of habit. They seem afraid. And you begin to notice it too. In the palace corridors, the sound of footsteps changes on full moon nights. Lighter, more spaced, out. As if the footsteps had learned to hide. The official documents you copy late at night always have the same footnote. Sandals renewed under the full moon. The sandals were renewed under the full moon, a detail that no one comments on but that never fails. You start to notice patterns. With each new sandal, a new policy, a new ally, a new punishment, and always the same silence. The most curious thing, the previous sandal is never seen again. Gone, missing, as if she had been buried along with the past moon. Historians still debate whether these exchanges were merely symbolic or whether there was something more sensorial. It is said that some emperors believed that old leather absorbed bad omens, others that the worn sole exposed the soul to unwanted forces. A philosopher even wrote that the sandal that repeats the moon brings with it the end of the empire. Maybe it's superstition, or maybe it's just a fancy excuse to feel new inside. You try not to think about it too much, but you can't help it. Because now you're the one carrying the purple cloth, you're the one handing out the new pair, your hands shaking. And even though you're in one of the greatest empires in history, surrounded by marble and gold, in the background, all that dominates the room is the sound of old sandals being carried away. No turning back. And for the first time, you ask yourself, what if these sandals are not just objects? What if they are records? What if each pair carries with it not just a scent, but a piece of soul? You'll go far in this story. But for now, your job is simple. Put the emperor's shoes on and keep your eyes down. You wake up early the next day with the sound of the emperor's footsteps still echoing in your mind. It's the waning moon, which means the sandals have already been changed, put away, or, who knows, taken away. But today, your curiosity takes you to one of the least visited corners of the palace, the workshop. You find it in the basement, passing through damp corridors with moss-covered walls and discreet touches of forgotten frescoes. The door, made of dark wood, creaks as you open it, and the smell of freshly cut leather immediately envelops you. At the back of the room, 3 craftsmen work in absolute silence, as if they were shaping destiny with their hands. You take in the details. There are hides spread out on wide benches, small pots of resin, and tools so ancient they seem more like ritual instruments than work tools. One of them, a short man with a thin beard and deep-set eyes, notices your presence. He doesn't send you away. He just keeps sewing, as if his craft were more sacred than secret. The tailor of the royal feet. That's what they call the man who makes all the emperor's sandals. His name is never mentioned aloud, and he is said to have lived for over 80 moons. Never more, never less. He nods his chin toward a pair resting in the dim glow of a lamp. You step closer. They're unlike anything you've ever seen. The soles are made from a blend of deer hide and linen fibers woven with obsessive precision. The straps are studded with tiny, shiny dots. You think they're fragments of pumice, but you soon realize they're tiny bits of amber, held together with copper wire. Each pair is unique, he whispers, not looking at you. The leather must be taken from an animal that died naturally. No sacrifice, otherwise the energy won't flow. You swallow hard. The sentence seems absurd, but the tone in which it was said carries an almost religious conviction. He shows you an old notebook, pages covered with detailed drawings of sandals, each annotated with lunar dates, leather types, and even the emperor's mood on the day of the exchange. Some are scratched with red paint. Those were bad luck, says the tailor, and turns the page without further explanation. You learn that ritual is not just about exchange. There is a cadence. The sandal must be made during the 5 days before the full moon, exposed to moonlight for at least 3 consecutive nights, and finished with a prayer in a low voice, never louder than a whisper. The prayers are said in archaic Latin, in an almost poetic way, always ending with the same phrase, such a mold, such a kingdom. Thus I tread, thus I reign. You try to ask where these rules come from. He just smiles, not showing his teeth. They came with the throne, like the shadows. Historians still debate whether this whole process was an invention of an eccentric emperor or a custom imported from older cultures, such as the Etruscans or the Egyptians. Some say Julius Caesar started the custom after a strange dream involving a snake and a pair of sandals with eyes. Others insist it was Caligula seeking to control the fortunes of political games by gentler means. But no historian has been able to access what you see now, a thick piece of paper with notes written in a shaky hand saying, "Blood moon sandals, do not wear, causes visions." The tailor closes the notebook firmly, and for a moment silence seems to grow around you. The air grows thicker. You understand that you must not ask any more questions today. But as you walk away from the workshop, something glimmers in the corner of your vision. A discarded sandal forgotten behind a trunk. It looks unfinished, with a strap cut off and a strange symbol engraved on the insole, a circle with 4 dots. You shiver. It shouldn't be there. You leave it where it is, but the image won't leave your mind. And as you walk out the door, the tailor finally looks at you. His eyes are clear, but deeply sad. Some steps shouldn't be taken, he says. You climb back up to the main floor, the sound of the door creaking behind you a belated warning. And now more than ever, you wonder what happens to the old sandals, and what it means to carry something on your feet that might carry you back. You lie restless through the night, listening to the soft scrape of footsteps on the marble above. Your room. Not ordinary footsteps, not the weary shuffling of guards, but something more ritualistic, paced, as if someone were walking in circles, turning slowly in the moonlight that filters through the arched windows. In the morning, the palace awakens to an eerie silence. Even the birds seem to refrain from singing. You are given a simple task: to carry a scroll of parchment to the inner courtyard, where the centurion responsible for guarding the emperor awaits. But when you get there, you find yourself in the middle of an almost magical scene. The emperor stands on a circle of white sand. Around him, 4 guards form a perfect square, all motionless like sculptures. And at the emperor's feet, a new pair of sandals, different from all the others. They are made of thick, dark leather, polished to the point of stone. Tiny shards of crystal are embedded in the straps, reflecting the morning light in tiny prisms. You approach them slowly, and you realize there is something vibrating in these sandals. As if they are pulsing slightly, the centurion calls to you. Come closer, see what no one else sees. And then you notice, under the sandals, inside the sole, are sewn small stones. Stones that do not belong to Rome. Stones from the east. Perhaps from Judea, or even further away. The texture of the sole is irregular on purpose, as if made so that the emperor feels with each step a slight instability. It keeps him present, the centurion says. It keeps him human. You smile, a little doubtful, but he's not joking. If he steps too firmly, he feels superior. If he steps too lightly, he loses control. Every stone there was chosen for its exact weight, not one more, not one less. And you realize this is more than superstition, it is a system, a psychological mechanism sewn under the feet of a man who controls the destiny of millions. The sandals are also treated with special oils. You hear 2 servants whispering as they prepare a new aromatic solution made from myrtle, camphor, and sap from North African trees. They say that smell guides the thoughts, one of them whispers, like the wind guides the boat. Historians today still debate whether this aromatic influence was truly effective or merely an imperial whim. Some argue that the use of scents served as a sensory anchor for important decisions, a primitive form of therapy. Others believe that the leather absorbed the odors, creating an emotional memory in the emperor's footsteps. You smell it before. You see it. It's fresh but deep, like a hidden forest inside the palace. And when the emperor steps on the sand, the sound is different. Not hollow, not dry. A whisper. As if the sandals themselves are trying not to attract attention. You follow the group in silence as the emperor walks through the ceremonial corridors, always at a slow pace. Always with a slight deviation in his left step, a detail that you now realize may not be a defect, but rather part of the balance. At the end of the hallway, he stops in front of a statue of Jupiter. He bows briefly, and then, without looking to either side, he turns and walks back the way he came. He doesn't say a word. But as he passes, the crystals shine, reflecting his eyes for a second. A gaze that carries the weight of the world, and of something else that you don't yet understand. After the ritual, the sandals are carefully removed by 2 servants. Wrapped in a black linen cloth, they are taken back to the workshop. But these, will not be reused, nor will they even be stored with the others. They will be taken far away. You try to follow them, but you are soon blocked by a guard. Where are they going? You ask. He simply replies, where the emperor does not go, and that stays with you. You spend the rest of the day observing the palace with new eyes. You notice that some of the soldiers wear braided leather straps with the same pattern as their sandals. That certain rooms in the palace have tiny plaques with designs of souls engraved on the doors, that even the shadows cast by the carved ceiling form the shapes of footprints at night. Nothing happens by chance, and suddenly, you begin to wonder, could it be that these sandals with their crystals, stones and oils were just ornaments? Were they actually tools? Secret tools to keep the most powerful man in the world sane, or to control it? You wake with the feeling that the sand is still beneath your feet, even as you lie on the hard bed of straw and linen. The sounds of the city outside, the clink of coins, the creak of carts, the muffled cries of the market, seem distant, as if you are caught in a limbo between sleep and memory. But today, the atmosphere in the palace is different. There are no ceremonies. There are no trumpets. There is no emperor. They say he is locked in his quarters. He has not fallen ill. He has not gone on an expedition. He does not sleep. He simply walks from one side to the other, in silence. With each new full moon, he walks further. With each new pair of sandals, he seems less present, and the stories once whispered now begin to take shape. You are sitting near the palace's indoor fountain when an old servant approaches. He is carrying a rough cloth sack in which he keeps scrolls of parchment, needles, and something that looks like a sliver of bone. He sits down with a sigh and mutters, "Have you heard of the curse of Saturn's heels?" You shake your head. He smiles, toothless. It was generations ago. An emperor, no one dares say which, dared to wear the same pair of sandals for 2 full moons in a row. He said he liked the feeling. He said nothing would change his fate. The old man rubs his knees and continues. On the 3rd moon he went mad. He began to pull out his own hair. He saw figures in the gardens. He spoke to shadows. He said that Saturn was chasing him, charging a price for his repeated steps. You try to hide your skepticism, but the old man notices. Do you think that's strange? What happened next is strange. Everyone who wore his clothes died with their heels blackened, as if the weight of his steps was still there, stuck, dragging. You swallow hard. Some historians tell of emperors who had unexplained outbursts, erratic behavior, sudden personality changes, disturbing dreams reported in letters, insomnia that made them wander the palace at night. The official theory always says stress, power, paranoia, but here in the palace corridors the servants use another word, inheritance, and they don't talk about the throne. They talk about the sandals. You decide to investigate. At night, you escape from your dormitory and hide near the doors of the sanctuary where the ancient objects of the empire are kept. There, it is said, the condemned couples rest. The doors are bronze, decorated with images of Mercury in motion, but there is something wrong with the figure's eyes. They seem sunken, almost empty. You push slowly and enter. It's dark. The smell of aged leather and mildew hits you first. Then comes the sound, like something being dragged across the floor. But when you turn on the lamp, there is no one there. What you see, however, is no less disturbing. Hundreds of sandals, stacked, organized, marked by dates, names, moon phases. Some are intact, others are cracked. Some have gold straps, others are made of plain fabric. But they all have something in common, small symbols engraved under the sole. Some you recognize, moons, stars, eyes. Others just look like doodles, but one in particular catches your eye, a black pair with soles covered in tiny, inward-facing, silver spikes. You don't need to ask. You know. This was the pair that drove the emperor mad. You feel a chill run down your spine. And then he hears footsteps. Someone is approaching. You hide behind a closet. A figure enters wearing a dark robe. He carries a new pair of sandals. Don't keep them with the others. He kneels before a small stone urn, carefully opens it, and places the sandals inside, as if they were the ashes of a loved one. Before leaving, he mutters a phrase that you don't fully understand, but that ends with something you've heard before. Saturn did not sleep. Saturn does not sleep. You don't know how long you spend there, but when you leave, the palace feels colder, as if the marble itself has heard the story. In the days that follow, you notice a pattern. Every emperor who ignored the ritual exchange met the same fate. Some went mad, others were assassinated, some disappeared. Historians still debate whether these curses are just stories created to justify the chaos of certain successions. But what if they are not? What if each sandal is, in fact, a broken promise, a pact with time, a way for Saturn, god of time and destruction, to collect on his delays? You begin to avoid the corridors where the sacred souls are kept. But you, one day you'll go back there. You try to maintain your routine. You walk slowly through the palace corridors. Avoid meeting the eyes of the soldiers. Repeat silent prayers before bed. But everything has a different weight now. Each step feels more conscious. You don't just walk on marble. You tread on stories, secrets, and silences that have accumulated in every crack. It is on one of those sultry mornings, when the sun sneaks through the cracks with a timid glow, that a hooded messenger calls you. He doesn't speak. He just hands you a small key made of bronze and points to a staircase you've never noticed before, hidden behind a faded tapestry. You hesitate, but follow. The stairs lead to a low, cold, almost underground floor. Down below you find a room where no one smiles. 4 men, all dressed in simple robes, sit around a stone table. In the center, an object covered in a thin cloth. One of them, the oldest, beckons you to come closer. You deserve to see it. They remove the cloth. Before, you is a pair of sandals that do not shine, do not emit any smell, do not look special. But there is something alive about them. They are completely black with jagged edges and a stitching made of reddish thread. The youngest among them says with a certain pride, "These were worn by the emperor during his first official ruling." You notice the details. There is a slight curvature to the sole, as if it was shaped not just for the foot but for the path. And most intriguingly, engraved on the inside, in tiny Latin, is the inscription, "Every journey begins with one step." Every path begins with a step. One of the men stands up and begins to walk around the table, as if he is reenacting something. He says, without looking at you, "These sandals were only worn once and never again, because the emperor knew each pair carries the energy of a decree, and a decree is like an arrow fired. You cannot take it back." You think of the counselors, the meetings, the maps spread out on the royal table, and then you imagine, what if the real ritual is not in the spoken word, but in the footwear worn at the moment of decision? They say that Julius Caesar hesitated before crossing the Rubicon, but few mention that night he changed his sandals. He chose a new pair, light, and burning bridges became inevitable. You begin to understand why they keep all these pairs as relics. They are not memories, they are records, not on paper, in footsteps. Her scribe enters the room and hands you an ancient volume. When you open it, you find pages and pages of footprint drawings, each one different, each one associated with a decision. You run your eyes over notes like full moon, decision on; borders, half moon, execution of traitor; new moon, imperial wedding. You notice a pattern, each lunar phase, a type of decision. The waxing moon was used for alliances, the waning moon for farewells, the full moon for laws, the new moon for silence. The men around you look at you as if they expect you to understand, and you do. The empire was not ruled by logic alone. It was ruled by rhythm. Modern historians might call this political mysticism, or even organized superstition. But in that moment, in that underground room, you sense there is more to it, that this is not about luck, but about control. You ask, and what happens to decisions made with the wrong sandals? The silence in the room is louder than any response, but the eldest finally speaks. These decisions turn into wars. You swallow hard. He takes you to a second door, even more discreet, and with the same key you received, you open it. The other side, a smaller room with only one object on display, a pedestal lit by a single candle. On top of it, a pair of white sandals. Totally clean, untouched. You whisper without meaning to, "Have they never been used?" The man replies, "They were made for a decision that never came, a war that never started, a decree that the emperor swallowed." You come closer. You almost touch the pale leather. But you restrain yourself, and in that moment something changes inside you. You realize that you are no longer just witnessing a strange habit of a powerful man. You are facing the invisible logic that sustained an empire for centuries, and it all starts with a simple act, putting on a pair of sandals. The days pass slowly after the revelation in that underground room. You return to your post in the palace, delivering letters, organizing scrolls, watching the soldiers change shifts. But your mind is still there, with those white sandals, untouched, guardians of a decision that never existed, until a new character enters the scene, an old hunched scribe with ink-stained fingers and small eyes that shine as if he always knows something that others don't. He introduces himself only as Priscus and invites you to visit his personal library. It's not an ordinary library. It is a narrow room, hidden behind a tapestry depicting Neptune riding a seahorse. The walls are lined with timeless shelves, and the air is thick with the scent of ancient parchment and damp dust. But what catches your attention are not the books, it's the maps. Maps of routes, of trails, of seemingly insignificant paths. The emperor's path from his bedroom to his throne, from his throne to the fountain, from the fountain to the temple of Janus. Each path meticulously drawn with tiny hand-painted footprints, some gold, some Grey, some completely black. You ask what they are. Priscus answered, Pegadas imperiumes. He explains that every sandal worn during a full moon is recorded, not only as an object but as a path. The distance traveled, the exact time of the steps, the shadowy spaces they touched, even the mosaics they stepped on, all of this is catalogued. You are shocked. But why? Because the empire is shaped by where the emperor steps. Every footprint a choice, every path a consequence. You look at a particular map, the one from the reign of Tiberius. The footprints are erratic, broken, some retracing themselves. Priscus comments, that year he was hesitant. He was going around in circles. He couldn't decide between war and diplomacy. And look, the chaos began weeks later. You trace, with your fingers, the emperor's path to the Temple of Mars. He stepped on 7 black stones, one after the other, before signing a treaty. And did that have an impact, you ask? Priscus sighs. Historians still debate whether these footprints provoke fate or merely reveal it. You look around and see other examples. Maps of the palace's secret passages, records of which sandals were worn in which corridors. There are red markings, places where the emperor stumbled, others in blue, where he paused longer than usual. Some in gold, with circular symbols marking the spots where the gods are said to have made themselves heard. You ask if anyone other than the emperor knew about this. Priscus smiles bitterly. Everyone knew, but no one talks, because a footprint can be erased, but a memory never. Do you remember those nights when you heard footsteps in the hallway? Footsteps that seemed to go around in circles, footsteps that weren't going anywhere. Maybe it wasn't just insomnia, maybe it was recordings. That same night, Priscus hands you something wrapped in old cloth. You open it carefully. It is a parchment. On it is drawn the plan of the palace with hundreds of footprints. And in the center, a blank space, a perfect circle without a single mark. You ask what it is. He looks at you serious. It's the path that has not yet been trodden. You feel a shiver, because there, in that absence, lies the future. A path that has not yet been taken. A decree that has not yet been spoken. A mistake that can still be avoided. Or not. You fold the parchment and tuck it into your chest. And in that instant, you realize that everything you have experienced so far, the silent tailors, the enigmatic guards, the cursed sandals, is part of something bigger. Much bigger. Perhaps deep down, the empire is not maintained by swords, nor by gold, nor by walls. Maybe it is maintained by steps, and you are now their guardian. Night descends on Rome with an almost theatrical slowness. Torchlight flickers in the palace corridors, casting long shadows that trail as if they have a life of their own. You walk slowly, aware of every sound. The creak of wood beneath your feet, the soft whisper of fabric moving, the breath of warm breeze through the open columns. It's a full moon night. You feel it even before you look up at the sky. There is a special stillness in the air, as if the whole city is holding its breath. Everyone is waiting, because today, as custom dictates, is the day of the emperor's ceremonial walk. You are summoned earlier than usual. You are given a dark cloak and led by 2 silent guards into a hall you have never seen before. It is long and narrow, with walls lined with pale marble slabs and a floor covered in a deep purple carpet. In the center, a corridor of carefully polished stone stretches to a small bronze door at the end. It is the ceremonial corridor of the 7 strides. You join a group of servants, advisors, and high-ranking soldiers. Everyone is silent. Everyone's eyes are fixed on the entrance. Then the door opens, and he appears, the emperor. But not the same as always. There's something about him today. A stiffness in the shoulders, a more distant look in the eyes. You notice that your feet are wearing new sandals as always, but these have a particularity, a light golden shine on the edges, and symbols embroidered on the straps with silver thread. Stars, crescents, spirals. He stops at the entrance to the hall. A priest mutters ancient words under his breath, and the emperor begins to walk. First step. The sound is soft, like a dull tap on wet stone. Everyone follows it with their eyes. Second step. The guards nearby give a slight nod, as if to confirm that the world is still in order. Third step. You notice that the emperor closes his eyes for a moment, as if he is listening to something that no one else can hear. Fourth step. The wind changes. There is no wind inside the palace, but you feel a subtle current, almost like a whisper passing through the room. Fifth step. One of the advisors holds his breath. You do too. The emperor continues, unwavering. Sixth step. A distant echo, whether real or imagined, propagates through the ceiling, a slight vibration like the sound of a string being tuned. Seventh step. The emperor stops. The room is completely silent. Then he opens his eyes, raises his hand and speaks in a firm voice, not loudly but firmly. Let this step be law. That's all, but everyone reacts as if he had proclaimed the fall of a city. You stare, trying to understand. It's just a sentence, you think. But it's not. This isn't just a proclamation. It's a conclusion, a final act, as if the entire empire needed that last breath to breathe. Immediately after the ceremony, the sandals are carefully removed, wrapped in blue silk and carried away. You try to follow them discreetly, but this time your path is interrupted. A tall guard blocks the way and says something you haven't heard yet. Today the decree was sewn into the soul. You ask what this means. He doesn't answer. He just points to the ground, where the marks of the 7 steps are still visible. Engraved, glistening faintly in the moonlight that streams in through the upper windows. These marks will disappear at dawn, he says. But while they last, the empire changes with them. You kneel down and touch the marble. It's warm, as if it carries the weight of what was said. Modern historians say that certain emperors performed symbolic rituals before issuing decrees to theatricalize their power, but no account mentions this detail, the 7 steps, the collective sensation, the almost mystical weight of the ceremony, and you begin to understand that changing sandals is not the ritual, it's the prelude. The real moment is this, the walking, the journey, the silence between the steps. Later, alone in the courtyard, you watch the moon reflected in the water of a fountain, and for the first time you ask yourself, does each emperor believe he is leading the empire, or is it the empire, and with its traditions, its sandals, its rituals, that leads the emperor? And then you hear, far in the background, a single footstep echoing through the now empty hallway, a step that no one took, or maybe someone gave it a long time ago, and it still echoes to this day. The next day dawns golden, with sunlight filtering through the stained glass windows of the Temple of Janus, casting soft reflections on the stones of the courtyard. You walk in silence, but your eyes are alert. After the 7-step ceremony, nothing seems routine anymore. There is something different in the air, as if time itself has slowed down. But soon you notice an even stranger detail. Senators are gathered as usual, but there is something out of the ordinary. They are all barefoot. Yes, barefoot. Wrinkled. Feet, some stained by time, others freshly washed, displayed with silent dignity on the marble floor. None of them seem bothered. None of them comment. They just stand there, in a circle, listening to the speech of a magistrate who, curiously, also does not wear sandals. You, curious, approach one of the Senate's oldest servants and ask almost in a whisper, "Why are you barefoot?" He smiles enigmatically and replies, "Because only a man can walk with weight during a full moon. It takes a few seconds for you to understand." The emperor walks in sacred sandals. The others, even the most powerful, must walk lightly. Deprived. No one should compete with the weight of royal steps. It is a silent, unwritten tradition, an invisible choreography of power and humility. On the nights following the full moon, the emperor carries the destiny. The others simply follow. Along. "Not even the gods dispute with Jupiter under thunder," says another servant passing by with a tray of figs. Here the thunder is his footsteps. You begin to perceive the subtlety of empire. Power is not measured only by the words spoken, but by omissions, by what is not worn, by what is avoided. During the meeting, you notice how each senator positions his or her feet carefully. No one steps on the marble lines. Some keep their toes tucked in. Others roll their ankles as if releasing accumulated tension. It is almost a political ballet, disguised as formality. An elderly senator whom you recognize from earlier ceremonies approaches you later during the break. He holds your simple sandals in his hands, as if carrying a story. These, he says, were made by the same man who sews the emperors, but without the symbols, without the crystals, without the gold. Then why do you guard them so carefully, you ask? He answers without hesitation, because they are a reminder of when I walked beside him in the ritual, and because, when I step without sandals, I remember what I am not. You don't understand it right away, but something about the humility of that gesture touches you deeply. And then, as if fate wanted to test you, you are called to deliver a scroll to the quiet council. It's a closed meeting, almost secret. You enter a cold hall where 7 men and 1 woman, all advisors to the inner circle, are gathered. All Avae. Them, without exception, are also barefoot. Only one corner of the room is occupied by a pair of sandals resting on the floor, but they do not belong to anyone present. You ask, in a whisper, who do they belong to? The oldest among them answers, 2 mistakes. You discover that after disastrous decisions, the sandals worn at the time are not discarded or destroyed. They are placed there in plain sight as a reminder. These shod the feet that commanded the war in the north, says a white-haired woman. These others walked before the famine. It is a form of penance, of confession, a memorial made, not of stone but of leather. Historians rarely mention these, the sandals of shame as some call them, because there are no official records. But inside the palace, in the spaces where power is discussed without trumpets, these silent pieces say much more than any speech in the Senate. You approach one of them. The leather is dry, the straps are broken, as if time has stripped away, the pride of the material. But there is something written on the inside of the insole almost erased. A wrong journey is not redeemed. The wrong path cannot be redeemed. You walk away with a lump in your throat, and as you leave the room, you have the impression that something is watching you. A distant sound, a light scratching on the stone floor. Footsteps, but when you turn your face, everything is empty. Just the hallway, the silence, and a pair of old footprints etched in the dust. You try to return to normality in the following days. But how do you get back to normal after seeing sandals that carry wars? How can one go back to being just a servant when one has already touched with one's hands the footwear of ruin? It is in this state of mind, restless, almost feverish, that you hear of a name that circulates only in whispers, Labeo. He was one of the greatest shoemakers in the empire, a silent master revered in the past, but today, exiled, banished, for an act that is never directly mentioned. Some say his creations were too beautiful, too seductive. Others say that one of his sandals was worn during an eclipse, and that, for many, was unacceptable. You find him in a secluded market, amid stalls selling spices and talismans. He looks ordinary, old, hunched, his hands stained with paint and old burns, but there's something in his eyes, a sharp calm, like someone who's seen the empire from the inside and survived. Labeo doesn't say much, but when you mention the moon sandals, he laughs, a dry, short laugh like the snap of leather being pulled hard. Do you still believe in them? He asks without irony. In the gods of the soul? You hesitate, and then you simply answer, I think I believe in footprints. Now, he then invites you to his studio in the back of a forgotten alley. There, amidst the dust and dim light, he keeps creations that would make any priest tremble. Sandals with metals from the east, soles inscribed with lost alphabets, straps made of red silk sewn with silver thread. These, he says, have never been worn. They are like unspoken words. They hold more power than the ones used. You ask why you were banned. He shows you a specific pair, wrapped in dark fabric. When you open them, you see something different. The sandals have symbol, inverted. The moons are turned. The stars, fallen. These were made for the wrong moon, he says. They were used by an emperor who thought he could cheat time. He wanted to decree under an eclipse. He wanted to be bigger than Saturn. You feel the air grow heavy. And did it work? You ask. Labeo looks at the sandals. It depends. He died the next day. Historians still debate whether this emperor died from poison, conspiracy, or disease. But you start to think of another hypothesis. What if the error was not in the decree, but in the footwear? Labeo shows you a sealed wooden box. These, he whispers, were made for the heir who was never crowned. You notice they are small, thin, delicate, as if they were made for a young person. Maybe a boy. He died before he could use them, Labeo says, but sometimes at night I still hear little footsteps walking around here. You don't laugh. Back at the palace, everything feels more unstable. The marble floor seems to creak beneath your feet. The tapestries rustle even when there is no wind. You feel like you've carried something with you. Not your sandals, but the weight of your stories. And then as you cross the square near the royal chambers, you hear that scratching again. A soft but insistent sound. You turn around. No one. But when he looks at the ground, he sees something. A sole mark, tiny, alone, recent. You crouch down. Touch it with your fingers. Still warm. And for the first time you ask yourself, do some sandals walk by themselves? The days at the palace continue, but for you, nothing is ordinary anymore. Curiosity has become obsession, and obsession is becoming something worse. You start to note steps that no one seems to notice, a light dragging on the marble in the early hours of the morning, a sound of a tense leather strap, an echo where no one should be walking. It is in this state of constant vigilance that on a sultry night, you decide to go to the old archives, a restricted place where only senators and scholars with authorization can enter. But you have already learned enough not to depend on permissions. You hide among the porters, enter with a box of papyrus scrolls, and gradually blend into the shadows of the West Wing. There, on a forgotten shelf, among treatises on agriculture and tax records, you find something unexpected, a diary. It's not official. It is not catalogued. It is hidden between two false rolls. The cover is fine leather, but the contents change everything. It is the diary of Caesar Augusto. Yes, that one. The man who shaped Rome like no other. The one, they say, was chosen by the gods. But what's written there doesn't sound divine. It's personal, human, almost scary. He writes about dreams, about visions with trails of endless sand where his footprints disappear as soon as he looks back. About hooded figures who hand him still warm sandals. About the sound of new leather touching the floor before he even steps on it. Augustus describes in detail how he came to choose his sandals based on these dreams, how he consulted priests, fortune-tellers, slaves who interpreted the movements of birds. I cannot wear the same leather twice, he writes. The memory of empire slips away through the heels. You turn the pages, each one stranger than the last. There is a passage that gives you goosebumps. Today I dreamed of a pair of sandals floating on the Tiber. They were mine, but I didn't recognize them. When I tried to put them on, my feet disappeared. You lean against the wall, trying to absorb what you read. Historians often paint Augustus as a cold, strategic, almost superhuman leader. But here he is, insecure, superstitious, searching for meaning in the sound of his own footsteps. Later, he mentions what he calls the red sandals of the end, made by a Syrian shoemaker, stitched together with horse tendons and dyed with coral powder. I will wear them only when there is no turning back, he writes. You close the diary with shaking hands, and the moment he returns to the main hallway, he almost trips over something, a small package, wrapped in old linen. You crouch down, open it, and there they are, red sandals, old, worn out, but still glowing like blood under the torchlight. You look around, no one. The hallway is empty. But the air feels tense, like before lightning strikes. You pick them up hesitantly. They are light, flexible, but their soles are dirty, with fresh mud. You know what that means. Someone used them, and it wasn't in the past. You decide to investigate. You go to the rooms where the imperial shoes are kept, but something is wrong. The shelves look different, an empty space, recently cleaned. A pair is missing. Do you remember Augustus's phrase, "I will only use them when there is no way back"? What if someone today did the same? You meet the royal priest. He is agitated. The emperor has locked himself in the temple of Vesta. No one goes in, no one comes out. They only say that he put on a new pair of sandals. Were they red, you ask? The priest turns pale. Try. You feel your breath tighten in your chest. The sandals of the end, those that should not be used until the last decision, the last gear, the last step, and the emperor. Put them on. You run to the temple, knock on the door. Nothing. And then, listen, a single sound. One step, just one, and a silence that seems to tear time apart. You stand there before the heavy door of Vesta's temple, your hand still resting on the worn wood, feeling the echo of that single footstep vibrate through the marble beneath your feet. No other person dares to come near. Even the guards who would normally be posted nearby have disappeared. The air is thick, as if the very atmosphere of the empire is waiting for something that has no name. You sit on the step and wait. Minutes. Hours. The sun goes down, the night comes up, and no one comes out. At dawn, the priest returns with a rolled-up parchment. He says nothing, just hands it to you. You open it with trembling hands. The text is short, written in the emperor's firm handwriting. The steps have been taken, do not erase them, but also do not follow them. The signature is illegible, but there is a seal, 2 crossed red sandals, the same symbol you saw in Augustus's diary. No one knows exactly what the emperor decreed inside, but from that day on he never appeared in public again. They say he still lives in the palace, silently walking the corridors under the cover of dawn. Others say he left, leaving someone in his place, but no one dares to ask. Because, like the empire itself, there are things that only continue to exist because no one confronts them. In the meantime, you get a new role. Officially, it's just a change of rank, but you get the idea. He's now the keeper of the Hall of Sacred Solace. Yes, that. One, the dark room. The one who keeps all the pairs of sandals worn under the full moon, organized by year, by moon, by decree. Now they are yours. You spend your days among the silent shelves, writing down dates, restoring dried-out straps, polishing buckles. Each sandal is treated as a sacred piece. You begin to recognize them by their smell, by the sound they make when placed on the marble, by their weight. Some are as light as a dry leaf, others as lead. One day, while cleaning a pair of soft black leather, you feel something strange. Inside the sole, hidden under a thin layer of linen, is a small piece of parchment sewn in. You hesitate, but then open it. It's a note from an anonymous shoemaker. These soles have never touched the ground. They were made for someone who didn't have time. If you step on them, do so with caution. You close your eyes and take a deep breath. They are not just shoes. They never were. They are accumulated decisions, silences transformed into leather, orders and renunciations engraved in every stitch of the seam. Historians still debate whether this collection existed. Some say it's a myth, that no empire would store sandals, as if they were treated. But you know because now it is you who walks among them, who feels the past under your fingers, who hears sometimes light footsteps crossing the room, even when no one else is present. One night, as you turn out the lamps, you hear it, a slight dragging, almost a whisper. You turn around, nothing. But on the central pedestal, there's a new pair. You don't remember seeing them before. They're white, plain, new. No labels, no registration, no origin. You hesitate, but an idea flashes through you like a bolt of lightning. What if this is the next pair, the one made for the successor, the one who, when put on, starts all over again? You walk away. You extinguish the last lamp, and you swear to yourself, as long as you live, this pair will remain untouched, because the empire still breathes. Even though your footsteps are getting quieter and quieter, the following weeks drag on like a deep cut in time. They don't hurt right away, but you feel that something has changed and that the empire now moves more slowly. The ceremonies continue. The meetings take place. The decrees arrive, but always in writing, always with the red seal of the reclusive emperor. And you? You spend your days weighed down by dust and sandals. But one morning, something breaks the cycle. A messenger comes running. He is breathing heavily, his eyes as if he has seen a ghost. "Come," he says. "They have found footprints." You follow him into one of the long-disused inner gardens. There, in the fine earth, they are. Clear. Recent. A pair of clear footprints, sunk with millimeter precision. They start at the old stone fountain and run straight up to the ivy wall. But what's the strangest thing? There is no return mark, Only one way. You ask if anyone saw who passed by there. No one saw. You kneel, touch the earth. It is firm. The footprints are deep, as if made by someone carrying a great weight, or by something older than flesh. You return to the room of the sacred souls, and your doubt is confirmed. The white pair, the new, untouched ones, are no longer there. You don't remember moving it. No record was made. No servant entered. But there is a faint mark of dust where it rested, an outline in the shape of silence. You sit, stare into space, and think, someone walked with them. Or perhaps, someone he was walked through them. That night, you decide to visit one of the most forgotten places in the palace, the Tower of the Winds. There, objects are kept that are considered excessively symbolic, too insignificant to be treated as sacred artifacts, but too disturbing to be discarded. You climb the spiral stairs, lamp in hand and heart pounding. When you arrive, you find a room filled with dust, moldy parchments, broken statues, and in the center, a dark wooden cabinet, locked with 3 locks. Interestingly, you carry one of the keys, the one you received from the priest months ago. She enters the first lock. You force the second one, it's open. The third just gives in. The closet creaks, and inside it you find something unexpected. A map, not of lands, but of steps. Yes, a huge hand-drawn scroll with footprints marked with lunar symbols. Each footprint represents a sandal worn in an imperial decree. But there's something even more disturbing. In the center of the map, there's a spiral. It's not a trail, it's a turn, a swirl of footprints that start out firm and become smaller and smaller until they disappear completely. You follow the line with your finger. At the end of the spiral, it says, "Iter seen fine." The endless path, you feel a chill. And then you notice that in the bottom corner of the map, there is a nearly faded note. This is the path of the last Caesar. When he is gone, only the sound of his footsteps will remain. You fold the map carefully and take it back to the room with the souls. You place it on the table, and for long minutes you stare at the emptiness where the white sandals used to be. It's like looking into a mouth open in time. Historians love to debate the fall of the empire, corruption, invasions, economic crises. But there, alone, amidst the smell of old leather and heavy silence, you begin to suspect something that would never make it into the books. What if the empire falls? Simply because there are no more footprints to follow, because the pairs are sold out, because the last path is being traced at this very moment, and no one, not even the gods, knows where it leads. You turn off the lights in the room, but before you leave, listen again. Not a step. This time, a sigh. From that night on, you start to hear more than just footsteps. The sound changes. Sometimes it's 2 rhythmic taps, as if someone is testing the floor. Other times it's a soft brushing, almost like cloth dragging across marble. And most disturbing of all, there are times when you seem to hear a second pair of footsteps following yours. You try to remain calm. You continue to tend to the hall of sacred souls, restoring the old pairs, cataloguing them with precision, cleaning with steady hands. But something is starting to get out of hand. The records, yes, the books that listed the pairs disappear. Not all, only the oldest ones. The most critical. Those who kept the decrees of the great decisions, the changes of power, the days when history was rewritten. You ask the servants. No one has seen anything. But everyone seems quieter. Their eyes are lowered. The corridors are emptier. It's as if the palace is trying to forget. You decide to investigate on your own. You start with the notes of Priscus, the scribe who introduced you to the world of footprints. But his office is sealed. An official mourning seal is attached to the door. He died, they say, in his sleep, without pain. But you find something that no one else seems to have noticed. A note left under his desk. They started walking again. You hold the paper for a few seconds, trying to understand, and then you run back to the soul room. The map of the imperial route, the one with the spiral, is still there. But it has been updated. Yes. Someone has drawn new footprints with fresh ink. Not many, just 7, but they all point away from the spiral. You try to contain your panic because it doesn't make sense. The spiral was the end, the endless path. And now there's a way out? A new path? You search for more clues and then find between two wooden cases a second map. This one looks more rudimentary, hastily drawn. It depicts an area you recognize, the crypt beneath the Temple of Saturn. You've never been there. They say it's where time is sealed, where official calendars are kept, and where once a year the emperor would come down alone with an object wrapped in black cloth. Nobody knew what it was, but everyone knew that he left there, different. That same night, you decide to go, alone. He carries a lamp, the map, and the last pair of ceremonial gloves he found in the soul room. And go down. The stairs are narrow and damp. The smell is of wet stone and old iron. When you reach the base of the crypt, you find a bronze door. It's open. The hall is round with dark columns and an altar in the center. And on the altar, there are them, the white sandals. Yes, the ones that disappeared. But now they are different. They are dirty, marked. One of the straps is broken, and there is dried blood stuck to the side of the left sole. You approach slowly. A shiver runs down your spine. Next to the altar, a mirror covered by a veil. You don't know why, but you remove the fabric, and what you see freezes you. There is no reflection, neither yours nor the sandals. Nothing. You touch the mirror. It is cold, still. But behind you, the sound of two footsteps, firm, equal. Very closer. You turn around, nobody. But on the floor, another footprint. This one doesn't go with the white sandals. It's an old brand, firm, deep, like the ones used by the first Caesar. You understand, in that instant, that something has been set free. That the old paths, those sealed with blood and decree, are once again being trodden. Historians will say in the future that it was a slow decline, a political failure, an economic exhaustion. But you will know, the empire began to crumble. When? The forgotten paths were once again traveled. The following days are marked by an unsettling silence. No one comments on the change in the palace atmosphere, but everyone feels it. The servants whisper less. The guards exchange brief glances. And you begin to notice the details. The birds, which always perched on the columns in the central courtyard, have disappeared. The smell of flowers was replaced by something more metallic, difficult to name. And there is a subtle new routine. Every morning, very early, someone sweeps the floors of the interior hallways, but not to clean them. To erase footprints, you catch them once before sunrise. A group of 3 hooded men scrubbing the floor with wet, ash-covered rags. You ask what they're doing. One of them simply replies, "The paths are crossing where they shouldn't." You don't insist, but this only reinforces your decision. You need to understand to the end what these paths are, where they lead, and why they are back. You return to the crypt beneath the Temple of Saturn. But now, the bronze door is sealed with chains. You turn away, frustrated. But as you climb the stairs, an unfamiliar man awaits you. He wears a dark, unadorned robe and carries no symbols of the empire, but you immediately sense that he has authority. He introduces himself only as the archivist. "You know too much to go back to being a servant," he says calmly. "And you know too little to prevent what's coming." You don't answer. You just watch as he draws a spiral line in the dust on the wall with his fingertip, the same one on the map. But now he draws something else, a rupture, a cut. "The last pair went on," he says, "and that opened up at the final stretch." You try to understand, and he explains with the calmness of someone who has seen others before you go crazy. "Every empire has an end. Ours was sewn in leather. Every sandal a step a decision, every decision a debt. And now we are charging." He hands you an object wrapped in fine cloth. When you open it, you find a pair of extremely simple sandals, no symbols, no ceremonial stitching, just rawhide with white straps. "The emperor has disappeared," the archivist says, "but the path must continue." You refuse. You say you are not worthy. You have no lineage. You do not have the blood of the gods. But he only replies, "You have already walked with your eyes open. That is enough." You hold the sandals in your hands. They are weightless, but they seem to carry the sound of thousands of footsteps. You take them with you, not to put them on, not yet, but to understand them. And in the days that follow, you begin to see more clearly. The senators are restless. Some disappear, others speak too much. The emperor's decrees keep arriving, but in different handwriting, and one detail makes you freeze. The seal is no longer red. It's gold, like the one on Augustus's diary. You check the records. The golden seal was only used once, and after that it was banned. They said it was the seal of decisions with no return. You decide to confront the archivist, but he is gone. In his place is a small piece of leather with a word written in it with a knife. Repeat. Repeat. You return to the room of the sacred souls, and there you find something that should never have been there. A new compartment, previously invisible, now open. Inside dozens of new sandals, just like the old ones, like copies, but they are not perfect copies. They are distorting mirrors. A full moon sandal now has symbols turned upside down. Another, from the Northern War, has the straps changed. The reconciliation one is sewn with black thread. You understand, someone is trying to recreate the steps of the empire, retrace the walk, as if repeating the journey would save the destination. But that's not history. This is an illusion. You take the simple sandals. You place them in front of the altar in the room, and you ask yourself, what if the real mistake wasn't the last step? What if the mistake is trying to walk you again? You put out the torches, and for the first time in many days he decides to sleep. But before you fall asleep, you hear the most serene and most terrifying sound you've ever heard, the sound of footsteps. Just like yours, the wind is now blowing softly. It touches your skin like warm silk. The footsteps that once echoed behind you have ceased. There is no more rush. There are no more rituals. The leather, the decisions, the decrees, they are all gone. You walk without thinking, 1 foot at a time. The path ahead requires no haste, no reason, just presence. In the distance, a field opens up. There are low trees, and a gentle stream murmurs stories that no one has written. You approach, you sit under a tree, and you feel that finally, the silence no longer weighs you down. Take a deep breath. You are safe, you are free, and the empire sleeps now, forever.